What if I told you that the biggest thing holding you back right now isn't your circumstances, your competition, or even your past, but the way you interpret what happens to you? And what if just a few sentences, spoken nearly 2,000 years ago, could immediately shift that interpretation and change how you think, react, and move through the world? In this video, you're about to hear 8 Stoic quotes that have the power to rewire your mindset on the spot. These aren't just clever lines for social media captions. They are mental tools, psychological armor, perspective-altering truths that have guided emperors, warriors, and thinkers through chaos, betrayal, failure, and pressure. If you've been feeling overwhelmed, distracted, frustrated, or stuck in cycles of negative thinking, stay with me. Don't just listen, absorb. Because each quote builds on the last, and by the end of this video, you won't just understand Stoicism, you'll feel it working inside you. Watch until the very end. One of these quotes might be the sentence that changes how you see everything. Number 1, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Read that again slowly. Let the words land instead of just passing through you. You have power over your mind, not over the economy, not over other people's moods, not over random disruptions, unfair judgments, or sudden losses, over your mind. And when you finally accept that boundary, when you stop wrestling with what refuses to be tamed, you discover something solid inside you. Strength. Not loud strength, not dramatic strength. A steady, grounded kind of power that doesn't shake every time the world does. Most of your stress doesn't come from events themselves. It comes from the story you tell about them. That's the quiet truth Stoicism keeps whispering. And it's the same message echoed by Epictetus when he said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Notice the shift. The power isn't in controlling the storm, it's in steering your inner ship. The wind can howl all it wants. Your hands are still on the wheel. You don't need to feel in control of everything. You need to feel in control of yourself. Right now, you might be in the habit of reacting instantly. A comment stings and your thoughts flare up. A delay happens and frustration blooms before you even notice it. Something doesn't go as planned and your mind spirals into prediction and fear. That pattern feels automatic, but it isn't destiny, it's conditioning, and what's been conditioned can be retrained. Start small. When something irritates you, pause, not for long, just a breath. Inhale slowly. Let the air fill your lungs, then exhale longer than you inhaled. In that space, those few seconds, you reclaim authority. You remind yourself that there is a gap between stimulus and response. That gap is where your power lives. Guard it, expand it, live inside it. You may think strength means overpowering circumstances, but Stoic strength is quieter. It's the refusal to let your peace be negotiated. It's the discipline to say, "This is outside me. My reaction is not." Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." That's not just poetic, it's practical. Your mind can be your greatest ally or your most relentless tormentor. The difference lies in whether you let it run wild or train it like an athlete in preparation. So train it. Each morning before the day begins to tug at you, remind yourself, "I cannot control what happens today. I can control how I meet it." Say it internally. Write it down. Repeat it until it feels less like a quote and more like a personal code. This is not denial, it's alignment. You're aligning your energy with what is actually within reach. There's something liberating about accepting limits. When you stop demanding that the world obey you, you stop feeling betrayed when it doesn't. That tension, the constant resistance to reality, drains you. Release it. Reality is neutral. Your interpretation is charged. Adjust the charge. Here's a practice to strengthen that muscle. At the end of the day, review your reactions. Not to criticize yourself, but to observe. Where did you lose control of your thoughts? Where did you hold steady? Don't judge, just notice. Awareness precedes change. The more you observe your patterns, the more distance you create from them, and distance gives you choice. Another exercise, negative visualization. It may sound dark, but it's deeply empowering. Briefly imagine that things don't go your way. Imagine delays, misunderstandings, discomfort. Then tell yourself calmly, if this happens, I will handle it. You're not predicting disaster. You're rehearsing resilience. When you mentally prepare for difficulty, you're less likely to be thrown off balance when it arrives. But don't misunderstand this philosophy. Controlling your mind doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means guiding it. You can feel anger without becoming anger. You can feel disappointment without surrendering to despair. Emotions are signals. They aren't commands. You choose what to do next, and that choice is everything. Think about how much energy you've spent trying to control what was never yours to control. The opinions of others, the pace of progress, the outcome of efforts, the past, the weather of the world. Imagine redirecting even half of that energy inward towards sharpening your focus, strengthening your patience, refining your discipline. That is how you find strength, as Marcus promised. Not by expanding your control outward, but by concentrating it inward. Your mind is like a lens. If it's scattered, your power is scattered. If it's focused, your power intensifies. Practice directing it deliberately. When negative thoughts arise, question them. Is this within my control? If not, release it. If yes, act on it. That simple filter will save you from countless hours of mental noise. And here's the deeper shift. Stop identifying with every thought that passes through you. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of them. When a harsh inner voice appears, step back and say, "That's a thought, not a fact." This single sentence can dismantle entire spirals. It creates separation, and separation restores sovereignty. Strength isn't loud, it doesn't need applause. It's the calm refusal to be internally hijacked. It's the steady gaze at chaos without absorbing it. It's choosing discipline over impulse, clarity over drama, patience over panic. You build that strength daily, through small acts of restraint, through mindful pauses, through honest reflection, through intentional reframing, through returning again and again to the simple truth, I control my mind. You won't master it overnight. Some days you'll forget. You'll react too quickly. You'll replay things you can't change. That's fine. Notice it, reset. This isn't about perfection. It's about practice. And with practice, something remarkable happens. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstances. You begin to feel like a participant in your own inner life. Events still occur. People still act unpredictably. Outcomes still fluctuate, but inside there is steadiness. A center that doesn't collapse every time something shifts. That center is your true power. So today, choose one moment, just one, where you consciously respond instead of react. Breathe, think, decide, then act from intention, not impulse. That small victory will ripple outward. Stack those victories, let them compound. You have power over your mind, not outside events. This isn't just ancient wisdom carved into philosophy books. It's a daily challenge, a call to discipline, an invitation to reclaim authority over the only domain that was ever truly yours. Realize this, not intellectually, practically, repeatedly. Live it in small decisions. Guard your inner world, direct your thoughts. Refuse to surrender your peace to external noise, and strength will follow. Not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that steadies you. The kind that makes you unshakable in a shaking world. Number 2, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca, pause with that for a moment. Let it settle. You already know it's true, even if you don't always live like it is. Your mind can be a brilliant architect, but it's also a skilled illusionist. It builds elaborate catastrophes out of thin air. It whispers what-ifs with such conviction that your body reacts as though the imagined danger is happening right now. Your pulse rises. Your jaw tightens, your sleep thins, and yet nothing has actually occurred. Seneca understood this centuries ago. In his letters, he warned that there are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. That's not poetry, that's diagnosis. You don't crumble because of events, you crumble because of the stories you rehearse about them. The Stoics were relentless about this distinction. They kept drawing a sharp line between what is real and what is projected, between what is happening and what you fear might happen. You need to start drawing that line too. Notice how quickly your imagination jumps ahead. It doesn't wait for evidence. It doesn't ask permission. It leaps. It fills in gaps with worst-case scenarios. It magnifies uncertainty into doom. And the wild part, your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined threat and an actual one. So you suffer, not because reality demands it, but because your mind insists on it. This is where your power begins. The Stoics would remind you that the mind is not your enemy, but it must be trained. Left unattended, it drifts toward anxiety. Directed with intention, it becomes disciplined and clear. You have power over your mind, not outside events, wrote Marcus Aurelius. If that's true, and it is, then your first task is to stop surrendering that power to imaginary futures. Start by catching yourself in the act. When you feel tension rising, ask one simple question: what is actually happening right now? Not what might happen, not what could happen. What is real in this moment? You will often discover that the present is far less dramatic than the narrative you've constructed around it. The discomfort is in the forecast, not the weather. Train yourself to separate facts from interpretations. This is a practice, not a one-time realization. Write it down if you have to. On one side, list the bare facts. On the other, list the fears, predictions, and embellishments. You'll see how much of your suffering lives in the second column. That clarity alone is calming. It brings you back to solid ground. The Stoics had a technique called premeditatio malorum, imagining potential misfortunes in a controlled, rational way. But notice the difference between that and anxious rumination. The Stoic exercise is deliberate and brief. You consider what might go wrong so you can prepare your character, not torment your mind. Then you let it go. You don't replay it endlessly. You don't inflate it. You don't turn possibility into certainty. If you want to rewire your mindset, you must interrupt the cycle of exaggerated anticipation. When your imagination starts spiraling, slow it down. Literally slow it down. Take a breath that's deeper than usual. Then another. Lengthen the exhale. Your body will begin to settle, and when your body settles, your thoughts soften. This isn't mystical, it's physiological. You're teaching your system that it is safe. Another powerful exercise: shrink the timeline. Your imagination loves distant horizons. It projects weeks, months, years ahead. Pull it back. Ask yourself, what do I need to handle in the next hour? Not the next decade, not the next month, the next hour. When you narrow your focus, the imagined storm loses its force. You return to something manageable, actionable, real. Remind yourself that pain, when it comes, is usually finite and specific. Imagination, on the other hand, is limitless and abstract. It stretches discomfort into infinity. It paints it in bold colors. But when difficulty actually arrives, it tends to be concrete. You deal with it step by step. You adapt, you respond, you endure. As Seneca also wrote, we are more often frightened than hurt. Frightened, not hurt. There's a difference. You need to trust your future self more. The version of you who will meet whatever comes is stronger than the version of you who is worrying about it now. You've handled challenges before. You've survived days you once thought would break you. Why assume that tomorrow's obstacle will be the one that finally destroys you? That assumption isn't wisdom, it's habit. Break the habit. Each time you catch your mind catastrophizing, gently but firmly redirect it. Say to yourself, that is imagination, not reality. Don't argue with the thought, don't wrestle it, label it, separate from it. The Stoics were masters of cognitive distancing long before modern psychology gave it a name. They understood that a thought is not a command, it's just a thought. Here's a practical drill you can adopt daily. Set aside 5 minutes, close your eyes. Let your mind present its usual worries. Watch them like clouds passing through the sky. Don't chase them, don't suppress them, simply observe. Then, for each one, ask, is this happening right now? If the answer is no, let it drift. If the answer is yes, ask, what is within my control in this moment? Act on that, however small the action may be. The rest, release it. You don't eliminate imagination, you refine it. Use it to visualize calm responses instead of disasters. Picture yourself steady, composed, clear. The mind that can invent chaos can also rehearse courage. Direct it there. Train it there. Condition it to anticipate resilience rather than ruin. Understand this deeply. Suffering in imagination is optional. Pain in reality may not be. But the extra layer, the dread, the rehearsed tragedy, the constant inner monologue of doom, that is something you participate in. And you can choose differently. That choice, repeated daily, reshapes you. You will still face uncertainty. You will still encounter discomfort. Stoicism is not about pretending life is easy. It's about refusing to double your burden by adding imagined anguish to real challenges. It's about meeting what is, not what might be. It's about grounding yourself in the present and standing there firmly. So when your mind begins to race ahead, pull it back. When it whispers catastrophe, question it. When it tries to convince you that disaster is inevitable, remind yourself of Seneca's words. You suffer more in imagination than in reality. Let that sentence become a checkpoint in your thoughts, a quiet interruption, a reset. Practice this consistently and you'll notice something subtle but profound. The space between stimulus and reaction widens. You don't jump as quickly, you don't spiral as easily. You pause, you assess, you respond. That pause is freedom. And once you taste that freedom, you won't want to go back. Number 3, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Epictetus. Read that again slowly. Let it land. You can't control the weather of the world, the moods of other people, the sudden turns, the sharp words, the closed doors. You can't command fate like a general barking orders, but you can command yourself. And that's the quiet revolution this quote invites you into. It asks you to stop wrestling with the uncontrollable and start mastering the only territory that has ever truly been yours, your response. That's where your power lives. Not in preventing storms, but in choosing how you stand in the rain. You've probably been trained without even noticing to think that events cause your emotions. Something happens and you feel angry. Something shifts and you feel anxious. Something ends and you feel crushed. It feels automatic, mechanical, inevitable. But Stoicism gently interrupts that narrative. It says, there is a space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, you decide who you are. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That's not poetic fluff. That's instruction. That's training. That's a call to discipline. So start treating your reactions like choices, not reflexes. When something triggers you, resist the urge to immediately label it good or bad. Instead, pause. Just pause. Let your first surge of emotion rise and fall without acting on it. Seneca warned that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Notice how quickly your mind spins stories. Notice how it predicts disasters, assigns motives, exaggerates consequences. Most of the turmoil you feel isn't coming from the event itself. It's coming from the meaning you attach to it. And meanings can be rewritten. You don't need to suppress your emotions. Stoicism isn't about becoming cold or numb. It's about becoming sovereign. When frustration flares up, don't shame yourself for feeling it. Instead, interrogate it. Ask yourself, what belief is fueling this reaction? Maybe you believe things should always go your way. Maybe you believe discomfort is unacceptable. Maybe you believe other people owe you understanding. Once you identify the belief, you can challenge it. Is it rational? Is it useful? Is it aligned with the person you want to become? If not, let it go. Replace it. Choose a steadier interpretation. Here's a practical exercise you can start using today, the response gap drill. Every time something unsettles you, count to 5 before you say or do anything. In those 5 seconds, take one slow breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Remind yourself, I control my reaction. That's it. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but repetition builds reflex. Over time, those 5 seconds become a shield. They give you distance. And distance gives you clarity. Another practice, reframe deliberately. When you feel resistance rising, consciously say, this is an opportunity to practice. That phrase shifts your posture. Instead of seeing the moment as an attack, you see it as training. Stoics viewed adversity as weightlifting for the soul. No resistance, no strength. Epictetus taught that difficulties show you what you're made of, so lean into that. When discomfort appears, tell yourself, good, now I get to practice patience. Now I get to practice restraint. Now I get to practice courage. You are not a victim of circumstances, you are a student of them. It will feel unnatural at first. You're rewiring years of conditioning. You're breaking the habit of emotional impulsiveness. But stay with it. Think of your mind as a garden. Events are just seeds blown in by the wind. You don't control which seeds arrive, but you decide which ones you water. If you water resentment, it grows. If you water gratitude, that grows instead. Each reaction is a drop of water, so choose carefully. Choose consciously. You can also train your mind in advance. Every morning, take a few minutes to anticipate challenges, not specific scenarios, but the inevitability of friction. Tell yourself, today something won't go as I expect. Someone may act in a way I don't prefer. Plans may shift. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. Marcus Aurelius began his days by reminding himself that he would encounter difficult people. By expecting resistance, you rob it of its shock value. When it arrives, you're not blindsided, you're ready, and readiness changes your reaction. There's another layer here that goes even deeper. When you accept that your reaction is what truly matters, you stop outsourcing your inner peace. You stop saying, I'll be calm when things settle down, or I'll be happy when people treat me better. No, you decide that your composure is your responsibility. You don't wait for the world to become orderly before you become steady. You practice steadiness now, in chaos, in uncertainty, in discomfort, especially there. Try this written exercise at the end of each day. Reflect on one moment where your reaction could have been stronger, wiser, calmer. Don't criticize yourself, just analyze, ask, what did I tell myself in that moment? What could I have told myself instead? Then write a new internal script. Something like, this is temporary, or I can handle this, or my character matters more than this inconvenience. Rehearse that script mentally. The next time a similar situation appears, your mind will reach for the new line instead of the old one. You're not aiming for perfection, you're aiming for progress. Some days you'll react poorly, that's fine. Notice it, learn from it, reset. The Stoics weren't saints, they were practitioners. They understood that mastery is a direction, not a destination. What matters is that you keep choosing awareness over autopilot. And here's the quiet truth. When you master your reactions, you become unshakable. Not because nothing affects you, but because you decide what affects you. You stop being pulled around by every external shift. You develop gravity, a centeredness. People feel it. More importantly, you feel it. There's a calm confidence that grows when you know that no matter what happens, you will meet it with intention. So start today, not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve. The next irritation, the next delay, the next unexpected turn, that's your cue. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, how do I want to respond? That question changes everything. It places the steering wheel back in your hands. You may not control events, you may not control outcomes, but you control your character in motion. And character exercised daily becomes destiny. Let Epictetus's words echo in your mind when the pressure rises. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react. That's your arena, that's your practice, that's your power. Number 4, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Marcus Aurelius. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. He wasn't offering you a polite philosophical suggestion. He was handing you a lever. A quiet, unassuming lever that, if you choose to grip it, can move the entire structure of your inner world. Read the line again slowly. Let it settle. The disturbance isn't in the event. It's in your estimate. That means the storm you feel isn't coming from the outside. It's rising from the interpretation you stamped onto it. And if the interpretation is yours, then so is the power to revise it. This is where your freedom begins, not in changing circumstances, not in rearranging the world to be softer or kinder or more predictable, but but in examining the story, you automatically attach to what happens. You have been conditioned to react quickly, to label, to judge, to declare something bad, unfair, threatening, disrespectful, almost before you've taken a full breath. But the Stoics would urge you to slow down that reflex. Epictetus said it plainly: men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of them. The world presents an impression. You supply the meaning. That gap between impression and judgment is your training ground. So start training. The next time something external unsettles you, resist the urge to fuse with your first thought. Instead, pause, literally pause. In that space, ask yourself, what am I telling myself about this? Don't rush the question. Sit with it. Notice the adjectives you're using in your mind. Notice the dramatic tone. Notice the conclusions that leap ahead of evidence. Your distress often comes not from the raw fact, but from the interpretation layered on top of it. You're not reacting to reality, you're reacting to your narrative about reality. This is not about denial. It's not about pretending that nothing bothers you. It's about precision. It's about accuracy. It's about refusing to let your mind exaggerate what is neutral. Because many external events are, in their essence, just that, neutral. They simply are. It's your judgment that paints them with emotional color, and you can repaint. Here's a practical exercise you can adopt immediately. For the next 7 days, commit to catching at least one moment of emotional disturbance each day. When you feel that internal spike, irritation, anxiety, frustration, write down the bare event in the simplest terms possible, strip it of commentary. Then underneath it, write your interpretation. Separate the two. You'll start to see the difference between fact and estimate. That separation is power. It's subtle at first, almost unimpressive, but stay with it. It builds strength in your mind the way repetition builds muscle in your body. You have to understand something deeply. Your mind is constantly estimating. It assigns value, threat level, meaning. Most of the time, it does this automatically. But automatic doesn't mean accurate, and automatic doesn't mean permanent. When you accept every first judgment as truth, you surrender your sovereignty. When you question it, you reclaim authority. Seneca reminded you that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about that. Your imagination, unchecked, can magnify a small spark into a raging fire, but imagination can also be disciplined. It can be trained to respond with proportion instead of panic. You are not a passive recipient of emotional pain. You are an active participant in how that pain forms. That might sound confronting. Good. It should be. Because if your estimate creates the distress, then revising your estimate dissolves it. Not always instantly, not perfectly, but gradually, steadily, reliably. The Stoic path is not about eliminating emotion, it's about refining perception. Try this mental drill. Whenever you feel disturbed, say to yourself, "This is an impression, not a verdict." Say it quietly. Repeat it if you need to. You're reminding yourself that what's entering your awareness is not the final word. It's a first draft. And you are allowed to edit. You are allowed to question whether this deserves the intensity you're giving it. You are allowed to downgrade its importance. You are allowed to see it as smaller than your ego insists it is. You'll notice something surprising when you practice this consistently. Your reactions begin to slow. The emotional charge loses some voltage. The space between stimulus and response widens. And in that widening, you feel calmer, not because the world has changed, but because you have. That's the rewiring. It's quiet, it's internal, it's profound. Don't wait for a dramatic turning point. Start small. Catch the minor irritations. Practice on the subtle disturbances. Train your mind in low-stakes moments so that when larger challenges appear, you're not scrambling. You've already rehearsed. You've already built the habit of questioning your estimate. Over time, you'll begin to default to curiosity instead of reactivity. Instead of declaring, "This is terrible," you'll ask, "Is it? According to what standard? For how long? In what way?" That interrogation weakens exaggerated judgments. You must also learn to separate your identity from your thoughts. A thought arises, an estimate forms, but that estimate is not you. It's a mental event. Treat it like a suggestion, not a command. You can examine it without obeying it. You can observe it without merging with it. This is discipline. This is practice. And like all disciplines, it strengthens through repetition. If you truly absorb Marcus Aurelius' words, you stop trying to micromanage the external world. You redirect that energy inward. You focus on the one domain you actually govern, your judgment. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to you, others are not. Your estimates are up to you. Your interpretations are up to you. Your perspective is up to you. Anchor yourself there. Make this your daily ritual. Each evening, reflect quietly and ask, where did my estimate amplify my pain today? Not with self-criticism, not with shame, just with honest awareness. Then ask, how could I have seen it differently? Over time, this reflection becomes automatic. You start adjusting in real time instead of in hindsight. This quote is not abstract philosophy. It is mental training. It is an invitation to responsibility. And responsibility, once accepted, feels lighter than blame. Because if your pain is rooted in your estimate, then you are not helpless. You are capable of recalibrating. You are capable of choosing steadiness. You are capable of looking at the same external event and saying, this does not define me. This does not control me. This is simply an impression. Let that truth settle into you. Repeat it until it feels natural. The world will continue to present events, neutral, unpredictable, indifferent. Your task is not to silence the world. Your task is to refine your judgment. Do that consistently, patiently, and you'll discover something powerful. Peace was never hidden in the external. It was waiting in your estimate all along. Number 5, he who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive. Seneca. Sit with that for a moment. Let it land in your chest. You don't have to agree with it immediately. Just feel the weight of it. Seneca, the Roman Stoic who wrote letters that still cut through the noise 2,000 years later, wasn't trying to be dramatic. He was trying to wake you up. Because when you fear death, when you quietly organize your life around avoiding loss, pain, embarrassment, risk, you shrink. You start negotiating with your own potential. You trade boldness for safety. And before long, you're alive, but not really living. You might tell yourself that your caution is wisdom, that playing small is practical, that holding back is strategic. But if you're honest, some of that restraint comes from fear. Not just fear of physical death, but fear of endings, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being seen, fear of losing what you have. And Seneca is challenging you directly. If you let fear dictate your actions, you will never step into the kind of life that demands courage. You will never do anything worthy of the breath in your lungs. The Stoics didn't obsess over death in a gloomy way. They contemplated it to sharpen their focus. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That's not morbid, it's clarifying. When you remember that your time is finite, you stop postponing your real life. You stop saying, "one day." You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop wasting hours on trivial anxieties. Death, when faced calmly, becomes a teacher. It strips away illusions. It asks you quietly but firmly, if your time is limited, why are you hesitating? You don't need to become reckless. Stoicism is not about throwing yourself into danger to prove a point. It's about freeing yourself from the paralyzing grip of fear. It's about understanding that death is not within your control, but your actions are. And that's where your power lives. Epictetus said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Read that again. The real tragedy is not that life ends, it's that you never truly start. So start now. Begin by noticing how often fear subtly guides your decisions. Pay attention to the small hesitations, the moments when you pull back from speaking your truth, the times you delay a meaningful goal because you're worried about what might go wrong. Don't judge yourself for it. Just observe. The Stoics were masters of observation. They trained themselves to see their own thoughts clearly without panic. You can do the same. When fear arises, instead of running from it, ask, what am I actually afraid of? And then ask a deeper question. Is this fear protecting me or imprisoning me? One practical exercise you can adopt is negative visualization, a classic Stoic practice. Spend a few minutes each day imagining the loss of things you take for granted, your time, your comfort, even your life. Not to spiral into dread, but to build gratitude and urgency. When you mentally rehearse the fragility of life, you stop clinging so tightly. You begin to act with more intensity, more presence. You realize that you don't have forever, and strangely, that realization makes you calmer, not more anxious. Because once you accept the worst as a possibility, it loses some of its power over you. Another practice, write your own mortality statement. Not something dramatic, just a simple acknowledgement. I am mortal, my time is limited, I will not waste it. Read it in the morning, let it shape your priorities. When trivial distractions try to pull you in, remember that your days are numbered, not in a fearful way, in a focused way. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." You don't need more years, you need more intention. If you fear death, you cling to comfort. If you accept death, you pursue meaning. That's the shift. When you truly internalize that you will die, something inside you straightens. Your posture changes, your decisions sharpen, you stop tolerating what drains you, you stop pretending you have endless chances. You stop shrinking to fit other people's expectations. You begin to ask, is this worthy of a living human being? And if the answer is no, you adjust. There's a certain boldness that comes from accepting mortality. It's quiet, not loud. It's steady, not frantic. It doesn't need applause. It simply moves. When you no longer fear death as the ultimate catastrophe, smaller fears lose their dominance. The fear of embarrassment seems trivial. The fear of criticism feels manageable. The fear of failure becomes a stepping stone instead of a wall. You start acting in alignment with your values, not your anxieties. Try this. At the end of each day, reflect on your actions. Ask yourself, if today were my last, would I be satisfied with how I showed up? Don't answer casually. Sit with it. If the answer is no, don't spiral into guilt. Use it as fuel. The Stoics believed in daily self-examination. Seneca himself would review his day each night, questioning where he fell short and where he succeeded. You can build that habit. It keeps you awake. It keeps you honest. You don't conquer the fear of death by denying it. You conquer it by facing it repeatedly, calmly, until it becomes familiar. Remind yourself that death is a natural process, not a personal insult. It's part of the same order that brought you into existence. When you see it that way, it stops being an enemy and starts being a boundary that gives your life shape and urgency. And here's the deeper truth. Fearing death often masks a deeper fear that your life won't matter, that you'll leave without having done anything meaningful. But meaning is not handed to you. It's built through courageous action, through choosing principle over comfort, through speaking when it's easier to stay silent, through pursuing what calls to you even when the outcome is uncertain. Worthy actions require risk. They require vulnerability. They require you to accept that you cannot control the final outcome, so train yourself daily. When fear whispers, "What if you fail?" respond with, "What if I don't try?" When it says, "Play it safe," ask, "Safe for what?" When it urges you to hide, take one deliberate step forward instead. Build the muscle of courage in small increments. You don't need grand gestures. You need consistent defiance of your own hesitation. Seneca's quote is not about macho bravado, it's about integrity. A living human being fully alive does not cower before the inevitable. You breathe, your heart beats. You have agency in this moment. Don't waste that gift by living as though you are already half gone. Accept that death will come and let that acceptance ignite you. Let it strip away trivial fears. Let it push you toward what is noble, what is challenging, what demands your best. You are going to die, that's the unchangeable truth. But between now and then, you have a choice. You can move timidly, guarded and constrained, or you can move with deliberate courage. You can let fear narrow your world, or you can let awareness expand it. If you truly understand Seneca's words, you won't wait for permission to live boldly. You'll stop postponing. You'll stop shrinking. You'll stop treating your life like a rehearsal. And when you act without fear of death, calmly, thoughtfully, but courageously, you step into something powerful. You become harder to intimidate, harder to control, harder to silence, because you're no longer bargaining with existence. You're participating in it fully. That's what it means to do something worthy of someone who is alive. Number 6, no man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus. Let that settle in your mind for a moment. You chase freedom in so many directions. More money, more recognition, more time, fewer obligations. But Epictetus quietly turns you back toward the only territory that truly belongs to you, your own inner world. He isn't talking about political freedom or social privilege. He's talking about the kind of freedom that cannot be granted or taken away. The kind that begins and ends with your ability to govern your thoughts, impulses, reactions, and desires. And if you're honest, you already know how often those things run you instead of the other way around. You feel pulled by cravings, steered by moods, provoked by opinions, unsettled by uncertainty. A careless remark shifts your emotional state. A small inconvenience ruins your focus. An unfulfilled desire tightens its grip around your peace. And in those moments, you are not free. You are reacting. You are being led. As Epictetus reminds you in the Enchiridion, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The Stoics understood that the battlefield is internal. If you cannot command your reactions, then circumstances command you. If you cannot restrain your impulses, then your impulses own you. So what does it mean to become master of yourself? It means you pause before responding. It means you question your own judgments. It means you separate what you can control from what you cannot, just as Epictetus teaches in the very first lines of his Enchiridion. Some things are up to you, your opinions, your choices, your efforts, your values. Everything else is not. When you confuse the two, you suffer. When you anchor yourself only in what you control, something inside you steadies. That steadiness is the beginning of freedom. But this isn't abstract philosophy. It's daily discipline. Start small. Today, choose one trigger, one recurring situation that usually disturbs you. Instead of reacting automatically, practice the Stoic pause. When the feeling rises, don't suppress it and don't indulge it. Observe it, label it. This is anger. This is fear. This is impatience. By naming it, you create space between you and it. That space is power. That space is mastery forming in real time. Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Notice the simplicity of that. He doesn't promise comfort. He doesn't promise ease. He promises strength. Strength comes when you stop negotiating with your weaknesses and start training your mind like an athlete trains the body. Repetition, awareness, correction. Again and again. You must also confront your desires. Seneca warned that the person who is enslaved to desire is never satisfied. If you depend on external outcomes to feel whole, you hand over your peace to chance. Ask yourself honestly, what do you believe you need in order to feel okay? Approval, success, certainty. Now challenge that belief. Write it down. Then ask, is this within my control? If it isn't, why am I treating it like the foundation of my stability? Here's a practical exercise. Each morning before the noise of the day pulls you outward, sit quietly for 5 minutes. Ask yourself, what is in my control today? List 3 things. Then ask, what is not in my control today? List those 2. Make a commitment out loud if you can that you will invest your energy only in the first list. This sounds simple. It is simple, but it is not easy, and that's why it works. Self-mastery also requires restraint, not repression, not emotional numbness. Restraint. The ability to feel an urge and not obey it. The ability to hear criticism and not lash out. The ability to want more and still say, enough. When you practice voluntary discomfort, choosing discipline over indulgence, you strengthen your authority over yourself. Skip a small pleasure, delay gratification. Sit with mild discomfort without reaching for distraction. These are not acts of deprivation, they are acts of training. You are teaching yourself that you are in charge, and there will be resistance. Your mind will argue, it will justify impatience, it will romanticize indulgence. That's normal. Don't fight your mind with anger, guide it with reason. Ask, as Epictetus often encouraged his students to do, is this within my power? If the answer is no, release it. If the answer is yes, act with intention. Freedom begins to feel different when you internalize this. It's quieter, less dramatic. It doesn't depend on applause or outcomes. It feels like calm in the middle of movement. It feels like clarity when others are reactive. It feels like standing firmly rooted while the wind shifts around you. And that calm is not passivity. It is controlled strength. Try another exercise tonight. Before you sleep, review your day, not with harsh judgment but with honest reflection. Where did you lose mastery? Where did emotion override reason? Where did you act from impulse instead of principle? Then ask yourself how you could respond differently next time. This nightly audit, practiced consistently, reshapes your awareness. You begin catching yourself earlier. You begin choosing better. Understand something crucial. Self-mastery is not perfection. You will slip. You will react. You will feel pulled. The Stoics were not emotionless statues. They were disciplined practitioners. What matters is not flawless control but persistent correction. Each moment you regain awareness is a victory. Each time you choose restraint over reaction, you carve a deeper channel of freedom inside yourself. You don't become master of yourself by dominating others. You don't achieve freedom by escaping responsibility. You become free by governing your own inner state. By deciding that no mood, no opinion, no external fluctuation will dictate your character. That is radical responsibility, and it is empowering. So begin today. Catch one impulsive reaction and soften it. Replace one complaint with acceptance. Question one anxious thought instead of believing it blindly. These small shifts accumulate. They rewire your habits. They fortify your mind. Slowly, almost invisibly, you start responding instead of reacting, choosing instead of drifting, directing instead of being driven. And one day you'll notice something subtle but profound. Circumstances still change, people still behave unpredictably, outcomes still fluctuate, but you remain steady, not rigid, not detached from reality, just grounded. You are no longer tossed around by every internal storm. You've become captain of your own mind. That is what Epictetus meant. Freedom is not granted by the world. It is built within you. Master your thoughts, govern your impulses, align your actions with your principles. Do this consistently, patiently, deliberately, and you will discover a form of freedom that no external force can threaten. Number 7, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't offering you a poetic slogan to admire and move on from. He was handing you a mental lever, a tool, a way to rewire how you interpret resistance itself. And if you really let this sink in, not just intellectually but emotionally, it can change the way you walk through every obstacle you encounter. You don't have to wait for the path to clear. You don't have to resent the friction. You can decide that the friction is the path. Pause for a moment and feel that. The thing blocking you is not an interruption of your progress. It is your progress. Your mind has been trained, maybe subtly, maybe aggressively, to see obstacles as signals to stop or complain. When something resists you, your nervous system tightens. You interpret difficulty as a verdict. This shouldn't be happening. But Stoicism asks you to flip that reflex. It asks you to see resistance not as an enemy but as raw material, as fuel, as the gymnasium of your character. This is why Epictetus insisted, difficulties show what men are. Notice the word show, not create, not invent, show. The obstacle reveals you to yourself. So here is the shift you must practice. Stop asking, why is this in my way? And start asking, how is this my way? That subtle rephrasing changes your posture. It straightens your spine. It pulls you out of passive frustration and into active engagement. You are no longer waiting for conditions to improve. You are working with what exists, and that is power. But don't just nod at this idea, train it. Conditioning the mind takes repetition. The next time you feel blocked mentally, emotionally, creatively, pause. Don't react, don't rush to solve. Instead, breathe slowly and deliberately. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. Do that 5 times. Then say quietly but firmly, this is the way. Not as denial, not as forced optimism, as discipline. Because what stands in the way becomes the way only if you decide to engage with it consciously. Otherwise, it remains just another complaint. You may notice that your ego resists this philosophy. It wants ease. It wants recognition without struggle. It wants movement without resistance, but strength is built through opposition. A muscle grows because it is challenged. Your patience deepens because it is tested. Your clarity sharpens because it must cut through confusion. Without impediments, you remain unformed. Soft, reactive, and that is not who you are trying to become. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Again, friction, trials. The Stoics did not fantasize about smooth roads. They trained for rocky terrain. They expected it. And because they expected it, they were not destabilized by it. You must adopt that expectation. Not pessimistically, but realistically. When you wake up each morning, remind yourself, there will be delays, misunderstandings, setbacks, inner resistance. Good, let them come. This is your training ground. You are not here for comfort, you are here for character. Here's a practical exercise to internalize this. At the end of each day, write down 1 obstacle you encountered, just 1. Then beneath it, write 3 ways that obstacle forced you to grow, whether in patience, creativity, endurance, restraint, or courage. Do this daily for 30 days. You will begin to see a pattern. The very things you once labeled as interruptions will reveal themselves as instructors. Another practice, voluntary discomfort. Choose small, controlled challenges on purpose. Take the harder option when it is safe to do so. Sit with mild inconvenience without immediately fixing it. Resist the impulse to escape minor discomfort. Why? Because when you deliberately lean into manageable resistance, you train your mind to remain steady when larger obstacles appear. You become less fragile, more anchored. This quote from Marcus Aurelius is not about passive acceptance, it's about strategic engagement. When something blocks your initial plan, it forces you to adapt. Adaptation builds flexibility. Flexibility builds resilience. Resilience builds confidence. And confidence earned, not imagined, changes how you move through the world. You stop fearing resistance. You start scanning for its lesson. But be careful. This philosophy is not about glorifying hardship or seeking suffering for its own sake. It's about refusing to waste what already exists. If difficulty is present, use it. Extract meaning from it. Squeeze growth from it. Do not let it pass through your life without transforming you. Here, another mental drill. When you encounter frustration, label it training, not problem, not bad luck, training. See how that single word shifts your energy. Training implies development. Training implies purpose. Training implies that you are in the process of becoming stronger, and that narrative gives you stamina. The Stoics understood something profound about perception. Your interpretation of events shapes your emotional experience far more than the events themselves. When you label an obstacle as catastrophic, you shrink. When you label it as formative, you expand. The external reality may remain unchanged, but your internal architecture evolves. And that internal evolution is everything. You are not defined by smooth progress. You are defined by how you metabolize resistance. So the next time you feel stalled, don't collapse into irritation. Stand still. Slow your breathing. Remind yourself of Marcus Aurelius' words. Say them until they feel less like philosophy and more like instinct. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Let that sentence echo in your chest. Let it interrupt your habitual negativity. Then act. Not recklessly, not emotionally, but deliberately. Ask yourself, given this exact obstacle, what is the next constructive step? Not the perfect step, the next one. Obstacles often narrow your options, but they also clarify them. They strip away illusions of infinite choice and force focus. That focus is a gift. And over time, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop seeing life as something that should cooperate with you. You begin to see it as something that collaborates with you. Every barrier becomes feedback. Every delay becomes refinement. Every complication becomes instruction. You grow calmer, more grounded, less easily shaken. You begin to trust that no matter what blocks your initial route, you will find or create another. Not because the world is gentle, but because you are adaptable. That is the rewiring. That is the shift. The obstacle is not in your way. It is your way. So lean into it. Study it. Work with it. Let it carve you into someone steadier, sharper, more composed. And when resistance appears, instead of tightening, allow yourself a quiet smile, not of arrogance, but of recognition. This is the path. This is the training. This is how you become who you are meant to be. Number 8, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Epictetus. Pause with that for a moment. Let it settle. Before you rush to interpret it, before you turn it into a motivational slogan and move on, sit with the weight of it. Because what Epictetus is really asking you to do is radical. He's telling you to choose your identity on purpose, not drift into it, not inherit it from other people's expectations, not patch it together from mood swings and passing impulses. Choose it, declare it internally. Then align your actions with it, ruthlessly, consistently, calmly. You don't start with action. You start with decision. That's the rewiring. Most people try to change their behavior without redefining who they are. They chase productivity hacks, discipline tricks, morning routines, but they never stop to ask, who am I trying to become? They focus on the do without clarifying the be. And without that clarity, your actions scatter. They lose direction. They contradict each other. You push forward one day, collapse the next. Why? Because your identity is undefined. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, understood something essential. Your life organizes itself around your self-concept. If you say to yourself, I am someone who avoids discomfort, your behavior will follow. If you quietly affirm, I am easily overwhelmed, your nervous system will oblige. But if you decide deeply, firmly, that you are steady, disciplined, patient, resilient, then your choices begin to line up with that declaration. Not perfectly, not instantly, but gradually and powerfully. You must speak to yourself first. That's the work. The Stoics believed that the mind is trainable, not by force, by intention. Epictetus taught that you are disturbed not by things, but by your judgments about them. So what judgment are you making about yourself? What silent narrative are you reinforcing every day? You need to become aware of it. Then you need to choose it deliberately. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one, wrote Marcus Aurelius. Notice the urgency. Stop debating. Stop theorizing. Stop consuming ideas about character and virtue as if they are abstract concepts. Decide, declare, then move. Here's where this becomes practical. Close your eyes and ask yourself without drama, without exaggeration, what do I want to be? Not what do you want to achieve? Not what do you want to own? Who do you want to be at your core? Calm, focused, courageous, measured, honest, disciplined. Pick a few qualities, not 10, 2 or 3. Keep them clean and clear. Now say them in the present tense, not I will become disciplined. No, I am disciplined. Feel the difference. One postpones identity, the other assumes it. This isn't delusion, it's direction. When you say I am patient, you create a standard, a reference point. And when impatience rises, you don't spiral into self-criticism. You simply notice the gap. You remind yourself that's not who I am, and then you adjust, quietly, without theatrics. That's the second half of the quote. And then do what you have to do. Once your identity is chosen, action becomes clearer. You don't ask, do I feel like it? You ask, what would someone who is disciplined do right now? And then you do that, even if it's uncomfortable, especially if it's uncomfortable. The Stoics were obsessed with alignment. Seneca wrote, be strict with yourself and tolerant with others. That's identity guiding behavior. You don't negotiate with your lower impulses. You don't wait for motivation. You act in accordance with the person you've decided to be. This requires repetition, daily repetition. Try this exercise. Each morning before you reach for your phone, sit upright and state your chosen identity out loud or silently with conviction. I am steady. I am focused. I am resilient. Then ask yourself one simple question. What must I do today to prove this true? Not to others, to yourself. Write down 3 small actions that align with that identity. Keep them specific, keep them doable, then execute. At night, reflect, not to judge, to refine. Did your actions match your declaration? Where did you drift? Where did you stand firm? Epictetus encouraged constant self-examination, not in a harsh way, in a sharpening way. This is how the mind rewires, through awareness and adjustment. You are not at the mercy of your habits. You are not chained to your past reactions. The Stoics insisted on this freedom. You control your inner life. You control your judgments, and that means you control the direction of your character. But let's be honest, declaring who you want to be is uncomfortable. It raises the stakes. Once you define yourself as disciplined, you can't hide behind excuses as easily. Once you say, I am courageous, avoidance becomes harder to justify. Identity creates responsibility, and responsibility can feel heavy. Good. Let it feel heavy, because that weight is what builds strength. You don't need external pressure when you carry internal standards. You don't need applause when you have alignment. There's a quiet power in knowing you acted in accordance with your chosen character. No one else has to see it. Here's another practice. Throughout the day, when faced with a decision, pause for 3 seconds, just 3. In that space, recall your identity statement. Then ask, what does this version of me do? That micro pause interrupts autopilot. It shifts you from reaction to intention. Over time, those pauses accumulate. They reshape your default responses. Don't expect perfection. The Stoics didn't demand flawlessness. They demanded effort, progress, course correction. When you slip, don't collapse into self-criticism. That's ego. Instead, return to the declaration. Reaffirm it. Act again. Each correction strengthens the neural pathway. Each aligned action reinforces the identity. You become what you repeatedly do, but only if it matches who you believe you are. And here's the subtle truth. Your identity is not discovered, it's constructed. You build it through chosen principles and consistent behavior. You are both the architect and the inhabitant, so stop waiting for clarity to arrive from the outside. Stop hoping circumstances will shape you into the person you want to be. Decide first, speak it, claim it internally, then step into the friction of action. Do what you have to do, not because it's easy, not because you're in the mood, but because it's aligned. This is how you rewire your mindset, not with slogans, not with bursts of motivation, with deliberate identity and disciplined execution. Say to yourself what you would be, then prove it quietly, relentlessly, daily. Before you move on with your day, pause for a moment. Don't just admire these Stoic quotes, use them. Let them challenge the way you react, the way you think, the way you carry yourself when life presses in. The wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus isn't meant to sit quietly on a screen. It's meant to live in you. Revisit these words when frustration rises. Repeat them when doubt whispers. Practice them when it's hardest. That's how your mindset rewires, not in theory, but in action. Now go forward calmer, stronger, and far less shaken by what you cannot control.